Oh, okay.
Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 14 of Legal Content Chat. Can you believe it? Every week I forget to say this, so I'm getting it in really early. We really love you being here. We'd love it even more if you could pop your questions in the box and comments for me or my guests today. So feel free, don't hold back. Any burning questions you have, please put them in the chat. So. Today's guest, something of a unicorn. Not only is she an exceptional lawyer, but she's also a legal influencer. So I'm not going to deny the inevitable any longer because you all know who you've come to listen to today. So welcome, Amy Cousineau-Massey. I really hope I said your name correctly.
Well done.
Brilliant.
You did that beautifully. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for having me. I'm so pleased to be here.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy. This is lovely. And we're here on a Friday, not a Wednesday, so it's a little bit unusual, but it's all good. So we had a little reschedule earlier in the week. So Amy, would you introduce yourself to those in the audience who doesn't know you, a little bit about background about you?
Sure. Okay. So I'm Amy Cousineau-Massey. I am originally from Canada, where I was born and raised. And then in 2007, I was traveling and I met my would-be husband on the pier at Weston-super-Mare. I don't know if anyone's ever been there. Well, you can't go there now because it's very sadly burnt down. But we met there, and then it was sort of like a love at first sight kind of thing. And I had to go back to Canada and finish my degree. So I did that. And then when that was finished, I moved here to be with him and see sort of what would happen. And we're now coming up on 20 years. I've been traveling and living in the UK, and we've got 2 boys and a cat. So I'm very settled here. I qualified as a lawyer in the UK and I trained here. So I don't know anything about Canadian law, which is kind of embarrassing because people will be like, oh, I have a question, and like my Canadian friends, and I'm like, I'm really sorry, I have no idea, which can be a bit embarrassing. But yeah, I've been qualified now for 10 years and I practice in employment law, which includes discrimination, which is my real focus, really.
Perfect. Thanks for that intro, Amy. And I love the Weston-super-Mare pier story. I have actually been on that pier many years ago, and only once, but all I remember was going to an event when I was working with my mum, and we'd had a few too many shandies, and I remember walking back across the pier and my stiletto got stuck. So that was completely off topic, but that's what I think of when I think of the pier at Weston-super-Mare.
It's such a shame that it burnt down because I feel like it was a really magic place. I mean, it's where I fell in love with my would-be husband, and the whole course of my life changed just by being on that pier. So yeah, it's a shame it's burnt down. But anyways, I digress, off topic.
Oh, that's okay. We all love a good love story, so it's absolutely fine. So we're going to be talking today. Today's topic is about how to get started on LinkedIn for lawyers. So I know that you're a massive fan of the platform. Has that always been the case?
No. So I started my LinkedIn profile when it came out. I don't know when that was, something like 2010 probably, or whenever it started. And it was basically my faceless profile. Like I had no picture on there. And my CV, like this is what I've done and this is what I'm doing. It was very bland. I did at that point traditional networking. So like that, turn up, have kind of a lukewarm glass of white wine, talk to some people, try and make small talk. And as a result of that, I sort of organically had about 300 to 400 not followers, but connections as they were at the time. So that's what I started out with, was a faceless profile and about 300 to 400 organic connections, which would have been people living near to me and people who I'd met through like networking circles in the south of England. And yeah, that's how I started out. And yeah, that's literally, so I wasn't always a fan. It became clear to me that it was somewhere that was getting more interesting. Like during the pandemic, you could start to see there were more kind of interesting topics and interesting people coming on board. And that's kind of when my curiosity was piqued, but I didn't really do anything about it. I was traditionally like employed in a traditional law firm. Like the first firm I worked for was a high street firm, and we were encouraged to reshare and post content, but it was like the firm's own content. So it would always be a big fat flop. Like you'd reshare and it was like you'd get nothing on it. And it was just part of our job was to go on there, reshare, go back, like get off there, get back to work kind of thing. The next firm then that I was at, there was a little bit more input on that, but it was just like firm-wide content. So it was sort of like an email would go around and say, oh, guys, like we've just put up a company like firm-wide post about, XYZ name, boring legal topic. Can you guys like and share? So you go in and like and share, and it was just like there's nothing to it. So that's kind of how I started out. I then left that firm after I'd had my first son because I just couldn't reconcile working as a lawyer full-time or even part-time and kind of having a child. It just didn't work for me. It wasn't something I was able to stretch to. I mean, I did give it a good go. I really tried. But it wasn't for me. And at that point, consultancy, like legal consultancy, was coming up and like on the rise. And so I took the leap in August 2019, and I left my like very comfortable employed position at like a really decent firm in order to basically go out on my own and start up as a legal consultant. And that's kind of when my mind was a little more focused on LinkedIn. But even at that point, I still wasn't doing anything about it. I still had like a faceless profile with 300 to 400 sort of organic geographical followers, like people who were like very near to where I was living. And so yeah, that's a long answer to your question. I'm sorry, I can only do long answers.
It's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have had a code word that we agreed beforehand, just so I could get you to stop if you went on a bit long. But never mind, guys.
The word could be monkey. You could say monkey, because that's my husband and I. When we're in the grocery store and we see someone, when you see someone and you should know them, but you forget what their name is or whatever. So like my husband or I will be like, oh, monkey. And it means like that other person has to step in and be like, oh, hi, I'm so-and-so, like to introduce and like get around that like awkward. So yeah.
I love that.
Monkey.
That is great. I definitely need to do that with my husband all the time because he can never remember anybody's names. So that would be very useful. Thank you for that little tip. I love it. So that's really interesting. So it's kind of like the firms that you worked at originally were paying lip service a little bit, I guess, to LinkedIn. It was like, oh, we kind of know this is something we've got to do, but it obviously wasn't being done in any kind of way that was going to get any traction or engagement or anything like that.
Yeah, and actually even further to that, like I was the employment lawyer in the one firm. Like I helped with a lot of the internal employment stuff, and they had me draft like a social media policy, which basically was saying like, just don't do anything, like just be really careful and not to put us out there. Like we don't want anyone to think, and I think that's ultimately the underpinning of why lawyers are afraid to perhaps go onto LinkedIn, is because if you're in a traditional employed role, you do feel a little maybe nervous of what my employer will think. There's ways around that, and I can come into that. But also just with our being regulated, we're kind of told like we have to uphold like what the public thinks of us, and we can't, be outrageous. Like you can be outrageous. That's the thing. You're allowed to be outrageous. You just can't be unlawful or discriminatory or like completely offensive. I'm sure I've offended people on LinkedIn. I'd be glad to know. But yeah, I feel like I don't set out to offend people, but I'm open with how I feel about things. And I have fairly strong opinions about fairly taboo topics, like mostly to do with women's rights. So, and I'm not afraid to share. So I know I've offended people. I've had lots of messages saying so, but Yeah, so that's definitely how I started, which is the position I think most lawyers find themselves in, with a faceless profile, 300 to 400 organic, followers that they picked up business cards and things like that.
Yeah, 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 of course. Oh, all these snowflakes are going to get offended. No time for that whatsoever. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to get you on, because you've got such an interesting presence on LinkedIn, and I really love the way that you come across, and you're very, this is who I am. You're unapologetic about it, and it just makes for just a more interesting feed, really, than seeing all the usual boring stuff. So you definitely need to carry on doing what you're doing, which is probably why you've been asked to be a legal influencer. So we can't talk about this. I know it makes you laugh every time I mention it. And you're like, no, this is not real. This is not me. But go on, tell us all about the legal influencer thing. How did that come about?
So I've had a couple of, I guess, companies who've rated me as being a legal influencer just by virtue of like the amount of comments that I get on posts, or the kind of things I'm saying and attention I'm drawing. But also recently got asked by Elena from Socially Legal if I would go on their roster. So I have. I haven't done any actual influencing yet, although I understand we're all getting tickets to Lawfluence like in June. So, and we've got a kind of post about that, and I wanted to go to that anyway, so I'm really excited about that. But where I have less than 5,000 followers, would be considered like a micro influencer at Socially Legal. But the point is that my connections and followers are really engaged, and so even though I don't have as many as say others, when I post, I do tend to get a fair bit of interaction, and that's just because I've built it in that way, kind of by accident. But it did happen that way, that the people who follow me are into me, I guess, as I would say. Like, it's not about me, but the people who follow me feel and think about things in similar way that I do, and or find it interesting, and so are engaged. Hence why I have the kind of impressions that I get, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess because you are talking about topics that are perhaps, a little bit taboo, a bit different from the norm.
Yeah.
People, you found your people, haven't you? You've got an audience, and that's great. I absolutely love it. So
yeah.
what benefits do you see for lawyers on LinkedIn? What benefits do you see personally for yourself, and also kind of generally as well for being on LinkedIn as lawyers?
Well, I mean, lawyers, we love a chronological story, so I'll keep going with my chronology of events.
Yes.
I left my high street, like more commercial firm in August 2019. I didn't have any restrictive covenants, so I was able to, I guess, pinch a few clients. So I took about 4 really decent clients, and that was going to be enough for me in terms of billing, and it would be repeat work and things like that. So I had these 4, and it was great. I had a really good run of it with those clients. Then, of course, we had the pandemic, which started in the January 2020, like a little bit past that. But at that point, there was huge change in employment law, and so many people were made redundant. And like, oddly enough, a lot of HR people, individuals are made redundant. And the 4 exactly, like, this was the universe telling me that there's a message here. But the people who I was getting instructions from, all 4 of them were then made redundant. And I lost a client like almost overnight. I had then no clients. So I still had a fair bit of word of mouth. People, individuals like claimant, employee work and stuff was still coming in, and it was fine. But also I fell pregnant, which is great. But, it's hard once you've then had a baby and you're self-employed. So I really lost touch with building my business, and people weren't going out in meetings, so I wasn't getting new clients on board. And by then, the December 2021, I think was the worst month. I opened no new client files. Like, I think I had 1 really rubbish inquiry, and it didn't turn into anything, and I didn't open anything. And I was just it was staring me in the face, like, you're going to have to go back into an employed role or figure out something else, because like, this isn't working now. And that was scary, because I didn't want to go back to being employed. And so by the January 2022 is when I was thinking, okay, LinkedIn, let's try it. Let's have a go. And that is when I really put my foot down and put my foot to the pedal and just went for it. And a lot of trial and error. And the benefits that I saw, to answer your question, were not immediate. But what it started doing was I still had those 300 to 400 organic connections of people. And luckily with employment law, and in fact, most areas of law, and anyone can almost be your client. You don't have to necessarily target, if you write wills, or if you sell houses, or if you sell businesses or deal on franchises or whichever, anyone can come out of the woodwork as a potential client, or they know someone. So it was such a wide audience that I already had, even though I only had 300 to 400 of those people. And they were people who already knew me, including former clients. And so all I was doing by showing up on LinkedIn was reminding them, hello, I'm here. And, to some extent, this is what I do, but more just, hey, I'm here, remember me. And then if they had a neighbor who suddenly had an employment law problem, I would be forefront of their mind. So I would get that referral. And it didn't actually feel as though LinkedIn was doing it, but it was absolutely me being on LinkedIn that was doing it. And that happened almost initially, but it did take a few months, 2 or 3 months, to then actually get anything direct messages into LinkedIn. And now, that is common, and it is wonderful. To get an unsolicited direct message basically saying, hi, I want to be your client here. Can you call me on this number? Or you don't know me, or my neighbor has told me about you, or I've been following your content for a while and I really now need your help. Because that's the other thing with my area of law, is it tends to be a bit of a panic purchase. Now I'm in trouble at work, or now we have this employee who's suing us. And so you can't just sell the product. It has to be the right time as well. So you need to be consistently available so that people will see, okay, this is who we need to go to. And so, the benefits are immense. And that's just to my work. That's not to the friendships I've made, to the encouragement I've had, to the learning that has taken place for me, the confidence I've been given to be myself, basically, and that where sometimes I felt like maybe I don't fit into this profession, I felt like, actually, no, I belong here and I have a really strong voice. It's what I have to say is valuable and important. LinkedIn has given me all that. So I can't underscore enough how good it is. Mm-hmm.
I love that. Sounds very, very empowering. And I can completely agree with you when you say that feeling of having an unsolicited DM. I'm talking about good unsolicited DMs, by the way, guys. Not anything that you don't want, which I'm sure we've all had plenty of them.
Yeah.
But yes, that feeling, or someone reaches out to you and they say, oh, I saw your post today and I really love it and it really helped me with something. Yeah. That is such a wonderful feeling. And when I started getting those as well, I was like, oh, okay, so people are actually listening to me. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really great. And that, just on the work aspect, if you're a self-employed lawyer, that's money in your pocket. Basically, there's no other ways of looking at it. Is you put on these posts, and then it results in people basically saying, call me, I need your help, and basically paying you. So it is now something that I do as part of my work, although I do really deeply enjoy it, and I do it. It's one of my favorite parts of my work, but I do view it as a work task, and it's non-negotiable. It's something that I must do.
Yes. Okay. So what advice do you have for lawyers that think they might want to get involved with LinkedIn, but not quite sure how to start?
Okay. So the first thing I would say is evaluate your why. What is your reason? Is it that you're employed currently and you want to build a personal brand as a fallback, which, by the way, I think is an amazing reason to do that, because as an employment lawyer, and also moving from an employed role to a self-employed role, the only person you can really count on is you. Mm-hmm. And it's such a great fallback position to have an active either following or group on LinkedIn that where you're getting work from. And it's, even if you're employed, it's only going to help you hit your targets, stand out in your firm, get those promotions you're seeking, but also it's a fallback position if you have to become self-employed, or if you want to be then you are in a position of strength to have that. So question is for yourself first is why do I want to do this? For me, it was out of desperation, which you don't want to get to the point where I got to, because then you know, it's like do or die. Whereas it would be nice to build it leisurely. That would be lovely. And on someone else's time as well, if you're still employed. So that figuring that out will help you to figure out what, you know, how committed you can be to it. Because it is a commitment, and it's a time commitment, and you have to want to do it, because if you don't want to do it, that will show, and in your content, you know, if you're not genuinely there, it will show. So figuring that out first and making sure it's for the right reasons is important. That's really the first step. Then the second step is just basically doing it, and it's very hard because, and one of my dear Linky friends, he reckons that it's like a chicken laying an egg for the first time. Like, how difficult is that? It just feels like putting out your first post is just really difficult, because it just is. But I would take baby steps. So I wouldn't necessarily just post, because that's a huge thing, hitting that post button for the first time. That is a milestone. What you can do first is to like zhuzh up your profile a little. Don't get stuck on that. Like, make sure you have a picture and that your banner is not too corporate, or that you know, you've got some interesting information that's on your profile a little. Like, you can obsess. Yeah. And I think that's a problem again for lawyers, is we do tend to obsess about the minutia. Like, don't do that. Just get something done a little bit. So work on that a little bit. Then you want to do two other things. You want to look around and see who's there, and follow a few people who are interesting to you. So it could be, for me, it's like other employment lawyers that are doing interesting things, also HR, you know, representatives, like people who could potentially be my client, and just interesting people generally. Like, I love Leah Turner. She's so interesting. She's full of tattoos and just a really great, interesting woman who has a different background to most in business. Nick Rayburn, he's fantastic. And Alice Fewings, those are all like LinkedIn coaches. Just follow them, because they're giving away free tips. Mm-hmm. And other people who you want to be like, you can go on their profile, and if you click right on it, there should be a little bell icon. And if you click that, then you'll get notified whenever they put, you know, posts. You'll see that, it'll come mm-hmm. to you. And then you're going to look at those and study them and say, like, why has this one been successful? What's interesting about that? What can I take from that? Because, I mean, ultimately, with all things social media, it's replicating the things that work, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like, you can't copy someone's work outright, because they'd be really annoyed with you. But you can take their idea and put your own twist on it. You can reformulate, you know, the conversations that are interesting are conversations that are open for anyone to talk about. And so it's not just, you know, you don't have to, sorry, I'm just getting a phone call. Sorry. You know, you don't have to feel pressurized to recreate or make something brand new that's going to be this amazing thing. So those are the first things I would do, is update my profile a little, and follow some interesting people and start learning. And I would do that over the space of 1 week. So again, with lawyers, we like deadlines. So I would literally in your Outlook calendar put study week, like LinkedIn study week, and you spend a week where every day you log in and you spend 30 minutes browsing, and you can also save posts that you like and study those. Just do that for a week. Honestly, don't get caught up in doing it for any longer. And then once you've done that, then you're ready to do the next two stages, which is, I wish I'd done this. I didn't. It would have been probably easier for me had I done it, but making a few friends on there. So, I mean, to befriend someone on LinkedIn is so easy, and it's so wonderful. All you have to do is find someone you like and comment on their posts. You know, meaningfully. And so a meaningful comment is not like, yeah, this is great, or agree 100%, or it's usually turning their idea around, mulling it, you know, saying something interesting or asking another question or saying, good for you, I've had this similar, or, getting more into it and coming to their attention. And if you do that a few times and they respond to you a few times, then you pretty much have a friend and they'll remember you. And that will help when you go to do your first post, because that person will maybe see your post and support you with it. And you'll just feel that, oh, okay, I got friends here. And all you need is a handful, like 3 to 5 people who are your linky friends, like your initial group, which is all you need. The last thing I would add for lawyers, sorry, I lost track of the question, which is typical of me, which I think you said, like, what should a lawyer do?
Yes.
The thing that they really need to know is how LinkedIn works, because that was something that really surprised me, but it also helped me, was to understand. So even though I had 3 to 400, whatever it was, connections when I first started out, LinkedIn's a bit sneaky because they won't, when it's not like Facebook. I'm a millennial, so I'm used to, Facebook, you put your post, everyone sees it, like your mom and your grandma and everyone who you're friends with sees your post. End of. Okay. LinkedIn is different. You put your post on and it goes through this filtering system where, I don't know, it's like sausages. We don't want to know how they make it, but they do something it's called the algorithm, but they do something to it to grade it. And then it goes out to a test audience of, I don't know, a handful of people. And if those people interact on it, like, I think it depends on things like if they like it or if they look at it and read it for a period of time, then it gets released to another group of more people. So it's kind of like a pyramid, like it goes out just to a few and then it goes out to a few more. Like they're testing, okay, how good is this content? How relevant is it? How much do people enjoy it? And which is why company, firm-wide posts about, I don't know, national minimum wage don't do well, because no one cares, so they don't get any interaction. Whereas your posts can do. But also, if you put out a post and it doesn't get any interaction on it, it could just mean that the initial people it went to, didn't love it for whatever reason. And you don't need to feel like everyone in your network has completely rejected you. It's just something to do with the algorithm, and it's not, you'll learn over time how to maneuver your posts through the algorithm, but you don't need to get too worried. And I think that is the main message. Like, there's 2 main messages. The first is, don't get too worried about how your posts do. Like, that's just a vanity thing. It's about consistency, and it's about being there and showing up and regularly doing it, and over time learning, okay, my network likes when I do it like this, or likes when I say things like that. That is really key. And the second thing for lawyers that is really key is limiting your time, because our time is our product. Well, okay, this is a great conversation that's being had on LinkedIn at the moment, is like, is time our product or is value our product?
Yes.
Huge debates, which is really fun. But fundamentally, like, our time is valuable, whether you sell your time, whether you sell value, hourly rate. So when I first started, I just took as long as I took to do my posts, because I think just be kind on yourself. Like, the first, 20 posts you write, it takes as long as it takes. But once you get past, like, say you've done 20 posts, then you need to start setting a time marker. And so at the moment, I only spend 30 minutes on any post. That's it. That's maximum what I will spend. And I try and do it in a lot less. So that's like start to finish, including taking a picture and posting it with that. So it's, the reason I do that is, I guess, 2 reasons. I do that because, like I said, time is our value, but also this whole idea of getting so in love with the post that then you get completely dejected when it's, doesn't perform as you think it should. And you just want to avoid those strong feelings either way, because that will be debilitating. If you think, oh, I've been rejected by everyone and I've said something, like, no, it could be that whatever you've posted, the way you posted it was not interesting. And you just need to take that more as feedback and sort of say, okay, the way I said that thing about, like, I don't know, national minimum wage. I'm just choosing that one because that's relevant. It's coming up. There's a big change to that. The way I said that, people didn't find that of interest. I wonder if I could reframe that or so for example, if you wrote about the changes and you said, hey guys, there's changes to the national minimum wage, people would be like, boring, like who cares?
Yeah.
But if you added your spin and you said like national minimum wage is now going to increase to, I think it's like 11.44, don't quote me on that, but and you could say like you could break that down as to what that means per month and what that leaves a person with, like how many takeaways they could actually get and stuff like that. And you could put your spin on whether that's enough or whether businesses are going to suffer it's too much. Like there's a spin either way. That would be interesting. And people would be like, oh, okay, I can engage with that. I can work with that. So it's like you can take any topic and kind of frame it in that way. So
yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point, because generally people are only interested in how it affects them. So yes, a bland and boring post about minimum wage is not going to probably go anywhere. But when you start saying, look guys, you could maybe afford an extra takeaway this month, that's definitely going to get people talking for sure. And I love your point about consistency as well. That's really important. But there can be a million different reasons why your post might flop. I mean, it could be time of day, it could be the fact that it's half term, anything could affect it. So you're right, just analyze it with a neutral head, don't get too emotional about it, and just rinse and repeat and learn from it. That's definitely great advice for sure.
Absolutely. And like I've certainly had to shake myself off many times and like start again, because there's been some like setbacks and people don't see it that way. But I mean, for me now, if I have a post and it gets less than, say, I don't know, about 3,000 impressions, I'm a bit like, oh, like poor me. And just think about that. That means that 3,000 people, like with the impression marker, is how many feeds it showed up in. It doesn't tell you how many people actually read it, because it could be on their phone and they're not really engaging with it. But that means that 3,000 people, whatever I wrote, was in front of 3,000 people. And if I had to give a speech in front of 3,000 people, I'd be bricking it. Like it would be a big deal to then have to know that my message was getting out to that many people. But so just put it into context. Like, when you go to one of those stale marketing events and you've got that glass of like room temperature white wine and you're like trying to make conversation, you maximum probably talk to 5 or 10 people. And I doubt you have meaningful conversations with hardly any of them. And yet, you could put up a LinkedIn post and just have a conversation with one person and it's really meaningful, and you've already been winning. Like you're already doing better than what you would have done if you'd gone to like that networking breakfast or whichever.
Absolutely, the potential really is incredible. So we've had a question from Yvette, who's asking you, Amy, do you think LinkedIn is still worth doing if you are more B2C lawyer than B2B? As in, if your ideal customers are not hanging out on LinkedIn, is it really worth it? Good question, thank you.
I guess my question for Yvette would be like, how do you know that they're not there? Because most people are there, and it would be hard, I think, to exclude them entirely. I think it is worth it, even if. So I think look at who your ideal client actually is, and yes, in a one sense, you're talking to your ideal client, but you're also talking to people who may know your ideal client, who are going to advocate for you, because your ideal client will talk to other humans who will be like, oh, we need a lawyer who does this, and be like, I know this amazing lawyer, she's on LinkedIn, she's just said this, she's great. And that, an example of that is that I have a Linky friend who recommended his neighbor to me, or no, it was someone he'd been on a ski trip with like 10 years previous to me. So it was like, he's my LinkedIn friend. He's went on a skiing trip with someone 10 years previous. She's, I guess, WhatsApped that group of friends who are still slightly in touch and just said, hey, I need an employment lawyer fast. And that friend has then put me in touch with this person. So like, I've got this client through, the crazy means. Now it gets stranger, even stranger than that. This person lives in London and is part of like a WhatsApp group for their London borough. And I guess neighbors have put in things like their close neighbors, and they would say, oh, I need an employment lawyer. And I basically have had 4 instructions from people coming from this particular place in London, because I'm in the WhatsApp group for this London borough. So you can't control who is going to see your stuff, and you have to accept that. But also, on the other hand, you don't know who's going to see your stuff. It could be anyone. Just put it out there. It needs to be out there for your client to find you. And I would argue, if she told me what kind of clients she's talking about, I'm sure I could prove it wrong about them not being on there. I'm sure they are on there. So yes, the answer is
okay. Absolutely, yeah. Keep doing it. So yeah, Yvette, come back to us if you want to be more specific on that. But thank you for your question.
Yeah.
So going back a little bit, that we were just talking about lawyers not being on LinkedIn, and saying perhaps that it might be that their firms aren't massively keen on them being on there. There's that kind of worry. You did mention that you had some tips for overcoming these kind of issues or concerns. What are those?
Yeah, so the first is going back to your why. If you're not on there, but you want to be on there, I guess it's figuring out why. And I would recommend it. I think it's an oversight not to do it. And even if you're employed, a great example is Jen Shipley. She is employed, but she's got a huge following. She's very personal. And I guess the tip for overcoming is, everyone is different. So follow those people who are interesting that you find, and just notice there are different styles. You don't have to be like me. I'm very out there. I'm very personal. My type of content is about my views and very personal content. And I'm not afraid to talk about embarrassing things like tampons or, baby loss or discrimination, anything taboo that kind of equal pay that relates to women's rights, then I'm there and I'm talking about it and I'm giving my opinions. Dear Sirs was an interesting one. I think I spoke about it yesterday.
Yes.
The use of that. And so you don't have to be like me to be successful. There are so many ways of doing it. It's finding your way. And what that is that's a line in the sand. So how much of your life, you need to show some of your life. You need to show your face, for example, on your profile picture. But how much of your life do you want to show? And just having the power, Nick Rayburn, LinkedIn, he's a LinkedIn mentor. He taught me this, but the line in the sand that you draw as to what you show of yourself is your personal line in the sand, and you have the right to draw that at the point where you want to draw it. And you can still turn up and be, less personable or show sides of you that are, I suppose, conventionally more accepted, and it can still be interesting. It can still be fun. You don't have to get those taboo topics going the way I tend to, and you'd still have fun with it. So yeah, so I hope that helps anyone who's feeling a bit nervous or shy. It's just about being a bit more creative with it and thinking, right, what can I do? How can I comment on this thing that will be of interest to people? And that's for lawyers.
And if more people start doing that, then hopefully more firms will realise that it's a good thing. It's a good thing for lawyers to have their own personalities and get out there on social media. This is what we were discussing with Elena the other week, and it is all about that, isn't it? It's about showing. We've just moved past the traditional law firm, and I think there was a great quote from Stephanie Costi, who said that we've moved past pale and stale, which I adore, and I think I've said it on every episode since then. So yeah, definitely here for it.
We have 100%, and you only need to go into your LinkedIn feed and see the kind of firm-wide content that's just flopping. And even if you want to show your firm, just take some of that content and turn it around with a more personal approach and just see how that does. And I think most firms don't need convincing, actually. I think a lot of firms now kind of understand that it is worthwhile. I would hope so, at least. I'm hopeful.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
You've got no excuse. If you're a self-employed consultant lawyer, then like absolutely no excuse. What are you doing with your life?
Yeah, exactly. Let's shame people into getting on LinkedIn, Amy. That's what we need to be doing, obviously. So shame people into it. Love it. So we've been chatting for nearly 40 minutes, so we
Oh
probably
my
want to
goodness.
wrap up soon.
Oh
And
goodness.
time literally just flies. So I think if anyone wants to get in touch with you, Amy, perhaps if they want a little bit of a hand holding or maybe a little bit of encouragement, are they okay to reach out to you on LinkedIn? Is that the best place
Yeah.
to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm considering holding a webinar for lawyers because and again, people are like, why would you do that? Like you're helping the competition, but I don't see it that way. I think as a profession, we've got a long way to go because we are seen as like money grabbers, greedy, selfish. And to be fair, historically we have locked ourselves away in a white ivory tower. But the truth behind all lawyers is that, well, most lawyers I've met anyways, is that there's something in us that needed to qualify into being a lawyer to prove like a self-worth element. And like you've done it now, so you don't need to prove yourself anymore. Just get out on LinkedIn, show that you're a real person, and make a difference to your audience. Add some interesting thoughts, and have some of those interesting conversations. The last thought I would want to share is about the profession just generally. And this year I had such an interesting situation when the Legal 500 was announced, which is where lawyers get notified of have they made like top tier, or of this basically book that it's like a phone book directory for lawyers, but it's you apply and you provide your own references. So of course you're going to only show the best side of you, and then you get rated on that, and it just feels quite outdated to me. It feels a bit phony to me. And what we had was like a flood. I opened my LinkedIn that day, and my feed was like a flood of lawyers just saying, yay, I'm delighted. I made the Legal 500 again for the 5th year in a row. And it was just sort of like I felt like I wanted to rat all over the place. It was just like, because to my mind, like what it's akin to is say you're at a dinner party and you're having conversation with a group of people. Maybe the dinner's finished, and you're sitting around an open fire and everyone's drinking, like sipping a lovely drink, whatever, a whiskey. Mine would be a port probably, or something. And you're like, there's like this room with atmosphere, and you're having just some amazing conversations, and you are feeling just excited by that. And there's a real sense of it's excitement in the room. And then someone who hasn't been involved in the conversation comes into the room and literally doesn't even come in the room, just like sticks their head in, is like, hi, I've won an award. Just thought I'd let you know. And then they're gone, and they like slam the door on their way out, and then you don't see them again for another year, and then they're back like, hi, I won the award again. Or like even worse, like in the summertime, they'll come in and be like, hey guys, I'm on a boat. And then they're like gone again. So it's like, don't post at all if you're going to do that. Just come and bring interesting perspectives, be consistent, and be there. Or just be a lurker and don't bother with, like, because it makes us look bad. You're bringing us all down.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, don't be that person. Definitely don't. And speaking of being interesting, if anybody who's listening or watching knows anybody, maybe on LinkedIn or not, that might love to be in Amy's seat today, please let me know. But you do have to be interesting, okay? You can't just be boring, because I'm not going to talk to you if you're not interesting, okay? So you've got to be interesting, you've got to be in the legal industry, and I also do have to like you as well. So there are 3 quite strong criteria there. We can't just be having anybody. And I'll have you know that we are actually booked up until June. So it's all happening. We're having many, many people every single week, every single Wednesday, apart from today when it's Friday. So yes.
Well, I am honored, and it's been great to be here. So thank you so much for having me. And like I said, I'm considering doing a free webinar just to kind of pull up our profession a little bit. And it's literally for toe dipping. It's for baby steps. It's lawyers who have 200 to 300 natural organic connections and nothing more.
I'd love to watch that, and if you need any help with it, I will be more than happy to
Ooh,
help. That is all
you.
good.
Thank you. I'll take that. Thank you.
Yeah. So next week we've got legal headhunter Liz Smith, and if you thought that Amy here had a lot to say, I think you're going to be blown away by Liz, because she's going to be talking about the power of talking, and she literally doesn't stop. So make sure you register for that one. I'm definitely going to have some kind of signal, something I'm going to have to wave. I don't know how it's going to go yet, but there'll be something. So hi Liz, if you're watching, love you. So, great. Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will catch you next week.
Bye. Happy Friday, everybody.
See ya.